Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for February 9th, 2018. On today's show, we're going to be diving into a bunch of news, including the Lobo movie gets a director, Masters of the Universe loses the director, Facebook's new TV series, we got some more solo news, Alex Garland has a new TV project in the works, and Disney streaming service has announced their lineup. All that and more. This is Peter Soretta, and on today's podcast we have with us Slash Film Managing Editor Jacob Hall.
Hello, hello.
Weekend Editor Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
And writer Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
So, guys, before we get into this, I just wanted to complain. I wanted to step onto this mini soapbox for a second about YouTube's new app on Apple TV. I use Apple TV every day. Like, I don't have a cable. You know, my cable is through the PlayStation View app on Apple TV, which I enjoy. And I'm starting to actually watch more YouTube content in this day and age. Actually, I probably spend more time on my YouTube app than I do my cable DVR app, which is kind of strange. It's almost like I'm turning into a millennial or something. But YouTube has decided to upgrade their Apple TV app and essentially make it like every other YouTube app there is. So like the YouTube app on Roku, and I guess they want to have a interface that's similar to all of those, and they have basically ruined it. It is now clunky. It like moving around it is frustrating. It looks horrible. It looks like something like made for Android like 5 years ago. It's operating it like, if sometimes I'm watching a YouTube clip, I want to like fast forward a little bit. Like doing that, it's so frustrating, so horrible, and I hate it. And I hate it to the point that I might actually just play YouTube clips from my phone, from the YouTube app on my phone, and just AirPlay it to my Apple TV now, because I'm so frustrated with this app. I'm so angry that YouTube has done this. But they don't care about me. They don't care about you. They're gonna do what they want to do. Do any of you guys use the YouTube app on the Apple TV, or even use the Apple TV?
The Apple TV is my bedroom device. I use my PS4 for most things. I never had a problem with the YouTube app there.
Oh, huh. Maybe I'll have to check that out, because I do have a PlayStation 4. But I've been told that the YouTube app is the same across all platforms and TVs and stuff. So I'm betting it's the same. I don't know. It just feels very clunky to me. But of course, no one from YouTube or Google is listening to this podcast, so I'm not sure why I'm complaining. But thank you guys for letting me vent for a second before we get into the news. And we do have a lot of news. After the podcast recording yesterday, it was announced that Michael Bay is in talks to direct a movie based on Lobo. Jacob, you wrote this up for the site. What do we know?
Well, what we know is a report from The Wrap reports that Warner Brothers and DC execs met with Michael Bay to talk about the Lobo movie. He has not signed on to direct, but he did offer notes in the screenplay, and Jason Fuchs, the screenwriter, who was also behind the script for Wonder Woman last year, is going to incorporate those notes, and if Michael Bay likes what he sees, he may sign on to direct. So that's the current status of things. This is an interesting and bizarrely perfect pairing of material and filmmaker, because Michael Bay is this vulgar, hypermasculine, bombastic director, and Lobo is a vulgar, hypermasculine, bombastic character. He was created in the 80s as a sort of space villain in the DC universe. It was reinvented in the 90s as sort of this mercenary biker traveling the universe, getting in fights, getting drunk, doing dirty jobs as a bounty hunter. According to The Wrap, Warner Brothers sees this very much as their answer to Deadpool, an R-rated, crass, comedic superhero movie. And that makes sense. And Michael Bay is the guy for this. I mean, Pain and Gain is practically a Lobo movie just without the science fiction. It's that same kind of attitude. And I'm not a fan of Lobo. I'm not a fan of Michael Bay. I don't like either of them. But at the same time, I look at this combination and go, yeah, that makes total sense. If you are going to make a Lobo movie, and you can't do worse than Michael Bay. He's a perfect fit for that character represents. I'm curious, though. I know that Deadpool was not actually a well-known character amongst real people before his movie. Do you guys know much about Lobo? I mean, does this character do anything for you?
I have no recognition of Lobo whatsoever, although, we have been reporting on a possible Lobo movie for some time. I know that this project, I think it was written, from what I understand, was written kind of in the vein, they wanted Seth Rogen to direct this, so they are going like full on Deadpool with this. And I know Guy Ritchie at one point, he's one of Warner Brothers guys, was wanted to direct this movie, or was considering directing this movie. And when he was doing it, it was going to be a CG Lobo, which I could totally see Michael Bay doing, because, Michael Bay loves his CG characters. He can have full control and not have to deal with those, actors with their opinions and choices. But I don't know. Chris and Brad, do you have any opinions on Lobo?
I know of the character. I feel like he was on one of the many animated series. I can't remember what it was, but it was one of the many Marvel animated series or whatever, DC. I can't remember what brand DC. It is, but I do remember it on an animated series of some point, but that's all I know about the character.
Brad?
I don't care.
Well, I think most of America that didn't read comic books didn't know who Deadpool was before the Deadpool movie. So, this is a perfect opportunity, just like, Deadpool or Guardians of the Galaxy, to grab the public attention. But is Michael Bay the right guy for this project?
Yeah, he definitely is. I guess the only, and in a weird meta sense, is that Lobo was created or reinvented in the 90s in this tough-talking brute as a parody of comic trends of the time, of the grim and gritty hardcore characters. Even though it was intended to be a joke, people took it seriously, and the character stuck, and Lobo was actually reinvented in so that his humorous take became the actual canon take for the character. And that lack of self-awareness is perfect for Michael Bay, a guy who exists in his own little world and tells stories the way he wants to. I mean, no offense to Michael Bay, he makes movies the way he wants to make them, and people tend to really like them. They do really well at the box office for the most part. But I feel like if anybody's going to look at that character without a shred of irony and go, yeah, that's rad, it's Michael Bay.
I was talking to a friend about this yesterday, and I was like, I love Michael Bay. I unironically love Michael Bay. And, but one thing I don't like about him is the humor he brings to, like those Transformer movies and the other films he does. And I was I was expressing my, hesitation, my worry that he might do it to this movie. But my friend brought up the point that, like, when Michael Bay does an R-rated film, when he does Bad Boys or he does Pain and Gain, the humor is very much more in line with it's not as bad as Transformers 2. So yeah, we'll see if he ends up doing it. We'll see if it's gonna end up being good. At least he's not doing more Transformer movies. But as Lobo gets a director, Masters of the Universe is losing a director, and they're now on the hunt for a new filmmaker. Chris, what do we know?
Yes, so David S. Goyer, who has, a wide-ranging resume with writing credits on, The Dark Knight and Man of Steel, was originally going to direct the Masters of the Universe movie, a.k.a. the new He-Man movie, but he has a scheduling conflict with the HBO series Foundation based on the Isaac Asimov stories. So he's not going to be able to make it work because Sony wants this film to come out in December 2019. So he's walking from the director's gig, but his script will still be used, and now Sony needs a new director.
By the way, whenever we hear of these conflicts, the first thing I'm so cynical. I'm like, oh, there was creative differences, or oh, he didn't want to do it. Like, I never buy this, like, oh, there was a schedule conflict.
No, yeah, I always think the same thing, too. There is probably more to it than that.
Yeah. So do we have any idea who they're courting for this, or we just know that they're going out to the mass filmmakers that would be able to helm a project this size?
Yes, that's...
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they could, anyone could do it. Anyone can direct a Masters of the Universe film. I don't think it's a challenging property. So go nuts. Anyone who wants the job, you can have it. Good luck.
I know we've talked about this on the past on the podcast, but I actually think a Masters of the Universe movie, if done right by the right filmmaker, could actually be cool. It could actually be, I know this is going to sound stupid and you're going to make fun of me for saying this, but the more fantasy version of Star Wars, it could be that. Jacob, do you have any feelings on He-Man and Masters of the Universe property?
I was telling this to some of the staff earlier today, but I started writing professionally online in 2009, and I wrote about the He-Man movie in 2009. So I've been writing about this movie, this unmade movie, for as long as I've been writing on the internet. So I will believe this actually exists when it's in theaters in front of me. But at the same time, I can't say I'm especially excited for it. I have no nostalgia for Masters of the Universe. I think the 80s movie is a hoot for all the wrong reasons. And I just can't get over the fact that the main character's name is He-Man. That's a hurdle for me. Like, Optimus Prime, sure.
It's Prince Adam. And then he gets the sword and becomes He-Man, right? Or I don't know. I'm not sure I know the mythology that well.
I still can't get over He-Man as a name to take seriously. So if Sony can make this happen with the right people, maybe it'll be a fun fantasy movie. I just don't see it happening. I think I'm going to be writing about this movie for another 10 years.
I wouldn't bet against it. But moving on, we've been talking about Apple making movies and TV shows. Netflix is definitely doing a lot of that, YouTube, and now Facebook is trying to get into that ring with their own original series from the director of Spectacular Now and Elizabeth Olsen. Brad, what do we know?
Yeah, so a little while back, Facebook launched this content feature called Facebook Watch. And it originally started as a platform where they were kind of partially funding content creators' videos and things like that so that they could help the people that were part of the community and creating consistently viewed content from Facebook users get attention and make some money off of it. It's expanded into some unscripted series. There's a show with Mike Rowe. They picked up a show that was canceled at MTV. And now they're starting to change gears a little bit and expand into using the money to create a smaller number of higher profile projects. And the first one is going to be this Elizabeth Olsen series. It doesn't have a title or anything yet, but it's being written by Kit Steinkellner, who wrote Amazon Series Z, The Beginning of Everything. And it'll be the pilot, and some of the episodes will be directed by the Spectacular Now director James Ponsoldt. Unfortunately, we don't know anything as far as what the series is about because they're keeping the plot of it under wraps. But it sounds like whatever it is, it's something that Elizabeth Olsen has wanted to do for a little while now, because she said, Kit's story has been near and dear to me for years, and I can't wait to share our dark, funny, and complicated show with the world. So whatever it is, it sounds like it's something that's a passion project for Elizabeth Olsen. Where I start to I guess kind of not care is I just don't know if Facebook has the power to really push into creating original programming like this and actually get a decent amount of attention for it. It seems like Facebook is becoming more of an archaic social media tool in the way that MySpace did, where it's being used by a lot of people who are in their late 20s, early 30s, and beyond. A lot of people who were part of Facebook when it first started in college still use it, but then the generation after that, they're all about Twitter and Snapchat and Instagram. So I don't really know if Facebook has the ability to, push into the same area that Netflix and Hulu and all them have, especially because, I bet you a lot of people don't even know about some of these other programs that they were already, working on and had. So it's just, I don't know. It seems like too little, too late, and Facebook maybe is just trying to bite off way more than they can chew, trying to have their hand in every single pot around town.
So what you're saying is the future isn't original series from Facebook, but original series from Snapchat that you have to watch in horizontal view, and they disappear. Like a day later? You only have like a certain amount of time to watch it?
Yeah, probably. And speaking of which, along the same lines of your YouTube rant earlier, the Snapchat update is absolute garbage too.
Well, Snapchat has always been a dumpster fire of a interface.
It's way worse.
Okay, so I think I already know what Chris would say about this. So I'm going to ask Jacob. Does Facebook have a chance in this new realm of original programming?
No.
Okay, let's go to Chris. Chris.
Yeah, no. When I saw this news, I groaned inwardly because Jesus Christ, enough with everyone trying to launch their own content platforms. Just enough. I have enough stuff to watch. No more. This is it. I'm calling a moratorium on it right here.
Okay, let's move on to Star Wars, because there's always more Star Wars, with new Star Wars movies coming every year. Entertainment Weekly is doing their Solo issue on Solo, a Star Wars story, and we are learning a lot more about that film. But let's start off first with, obviously, Lord and Miller were fired and replaced on this project by Ron Howard, and this issue kind of delves into that and gives us a little bit of more insight. Chris, what did we learn?
So by now, pretty much everyone knows that Lord and Miller were fired and Ron Howard were brought in, and the rumors at the time were that they were clashing with Kathleen Kennedy, who the president of Lucasfilm, who oversees all these films. And this Entertainment Weekly story pretty much confirms what we already knew, just gives a little more background on it. There's a lot of good quotes. I encourage you to go read it at /film.com. But Kathleen Kennedy essentially says, Lord and Miller, they're great guys, they're hilarious, but they weren't delivering the film that Lucasfilm wanted. It seems like Lord and Miller were very open to improvisation. And while Kathleen Kennedy says that's fine, she also seems to hint that they were doing so much improvisation that it was taking the film almost off schedule in a way. It was bogging things down and not getting the movie everyone at Lucasfilm at least was hoping for. And Ron Howard is also interviewed, and he's very nice about the whole thing. He says he was hesitant to take it over because he didn't want to step on Lord and Miller's toes, but he was also a really big Star Wars fan, and the opportunity was just too big to pass up. He doesn't, they ask him, how much of the film is yours and how much is Lord and Miller's. He doesn't really give a full answer, but he does say Lord and Miller's fingerprints are still all over the film. So I feel like for now that's as much of an answer as we're going to get. Maybe one day we'll learn, just how much of it is Howard's and how much of it is Lord and Miller's.
Well, I've talked to a lot of directors, and you talk to directors, and they will tell you that half the job is in the pre-production, the casting of the film, obviously the script, the production design, and almost all of that was Lord and Miller, right? So Ron Howard's coming on, and even if he's reshooting and redirecting most of it, he is taking the handoff of most of the creative decisions that Lord and Miller made during the pre-production stages. And I think I've said in the past in the podcast that, a lot of people are, when it was first reported that Lord and Miller were removed, a lot of people were saying that it was because of the comedy, because of their choices there. I had said on the podcast that I had heard that it was because they were running behind schedule, that they were, starting a day that was supposed to start shooting at 9 and, not getting a first shot until noon. I don't know if those rumors are true. I wasn't on set, but I heard, it was more of that thing than actually, the comedy side of things. And I think Kathleen Kennedy's hinting at it there. But also it's interesting in this article is that we're learning of a couple people from past Star Wars history that are kind of contributing to this movie in some way, and that includes George Lucas. Brad, what do we know about George Lucas's role on Solo?
So obviously a lot of people know George Lucas because of his work on Star Wars, but before he ever created one of the most iconic sci-fi franchises ever, he worked on a film called American Graffiti that starred a young Ron Howard who was just 18. He was going by Ronnie Howard during those days. And he'd already been in a bunch of stuff because he was a child actor, as we all know, on the Andy Griffith Show, a bunch of other classic TV series and things like that. And it just so happens that Ron Howard actually found out about Star Wars before a lot of people had, when it was still an idea that George Lucas had. They were talking on the set one late night, and Ron Howard asked him, what he was looking to do next. They had struck up a little bit of a friendship because Ron Howard had just been accepted to USC Film School, which is where George Lucas went and got all his filmmaking knowledge from. And George Lucas happened to tell him about this nugget of an idea he had for something that was like Flash Gordon. And as we all know, that's the whole premise for Star Wars, something that was a little bit more fast-paced in the world similar to that of 2001: A Space Odyssey. And Ron Howard even said at the time it wasn't something that he could necessarily easily wrap his head around until he saw it in theaters and kind of had his mind blown. And so we flash forward to 44 or 45 years later, and Ron Howard's on the set of Solo, A Star Wars Story, directing, and George Lucas comes by for just a quick visit, just to come and say hi. George Lucas had worked with Ron Howard before on Willow. They've been friends for a long time. They've collaborated a few times as well. So just a friendly stop by. Why shouldn't the creator of all, this entire world be able to see what's going on with the origin story of one of the most iconic characters he created? And so Kathleen Kennedy says what was supposed to be just a quick drop by turned into like a 5-hour visit where he was just hanging around and watching them film and that kind of thing. And it turns out during one particular scene, Kathleen Kennedy wouldn't say what was happening in the scene, but it's something on the Millennium Falcon. George just made a quick suggestion. He's like, oh, well, why doesn't Han do this? And Ron Howard was right there and like heard what he had said. And he was like, oh, yeah. And so he like went and said, and he was like, hey, he's like, George says that we should try this out. And so they did. And apparently it's a funny moment in the movie. Maybe we'll be able to pinpoint what it is once we actually see it. We don't have any more specifics beyond that. But it looks like George Lucas still has a little bit of ambition to still direct all the toys that he created.
And I should mention a couple days ago we were commenting on the Solo trailer, and Ben and I commented on how we were surprised that it looked so stylish and gritty, and that people were saying that Ron Howard was just a journeyman director, and we expected to be more, just standard. We got a lot of criticism in the email for that, because obviously Ron Howard is not that guy. You look at his films, you look beyond his Da Vinci Code films, and you have films like Apollo 13, and some big stylish movies. So, anyways, I just want to say that I don't think our criticism was of Ron Howard. I think it was criticism of the situation and him coming in, and I think we just assumed that he was going to get it done. If that makes any sense. But let's also talk about someone else who helped from the original trilogy on this new Solo, A Star Wars Story, and that is Han Solo himself, Harrison Ford. Chris, how did he help?
Yeah, I feel like, everyone loves Harrison Ford. I love Harrison Ford. But when you think of Harrison Ford, you think of him as this gruff, grumbly guy who really doesn't care about Star Wars that much. He had his time in the sun. He got a huge paycheck for The Force Awakens. And I kind of personally thought like that was it. Once he's done with The Force Awakens, he's done with this franchise. But per this story, he acted sort of as a secret advisor on the film. Kathleen Kennedy says she sent him the script and he approved of it. And he also just offered advice. Ron Howard met with him when he took over the project, and he just, he offered advice on the character, on, the character's loneliness, all this stuff. And it reveals that as gruff and grumbly as Harrison Ford is about, his career and this character, he does actually think a lot about it. I guess he just can't let it go, and he has a lot of thoughts about the legacy of the character. So I was a little touched by this story because, like I said, I really didn't expect this to happen.
Yeah, me neither. This poses a question in my mind. Do you think there's any chance that Harrison Ford actually appears in this somewhere?
I've been wondering that ever since the movie was announced, honestly, if there's like some sort of, I don't know,
like
flash. Like flash forward or something, but I really don't know. I mean, we'll find out sooner, but I kind of want to say no, but I mean,
you could start it with his funeral that we didn't see in The Last Jedi.
Right. Yeah.
But that wouldn't put him in it, would it? So I'm not sure.
Oh, he could be in the space coffin or whatever it would be.
Yeah. Although that would be kind of depressing to start the film with the funeral.
Yeah.
I don't want the funeral in that movie. I don't want Harrison Ford to appear. Just no, that seems so forced and totally undercuts his death in Force Awakens.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to Alex Garland. His film Annihilation is coming out soon. We just talked about the early buzz yesterday, and he's doing press, and he's revealed his next project is going to be a TV series. Jacob, what do we know?
Well, what we know is what Garland told Fandango in an interview, and I'm just going to read his quote. The next project, provided it happens, hopefully we're going to shoot it later this year. It's an 8-part television series for FX. It's sort of a science fiction, but it's much more technology-based sci-fi, whereas Annihilation is a more hallucinogenic form of sci-fi and more fantastical form of sci-fi. This is slightly more in common with projects I've worked on like Ex Machina or Never Let Me Go, which are taking something about our world now, not our world in the future, but our world as is right now, and then drawing sort of inferences, conclusions about it. So we actually knew that Garland had a deal with FX a couple of years ago, but this is our first time hearing what he's up to. And while we don't know any details, as our own writer Hoi Tran Bui pointed out in this article, Never Let Me Go, which Garland wrote for director Mark Romanek, and Ex Machina, while they're both very different science fiction films, are both these sort of dark stories of what it means to be human. In Ex Machina, it is about artificial intelligence gaining sentience and fighting for its own right to exist. And Never Let Me Go is about people who are grown up as clones simply to be organ donors, trying to gain their own rights. So even though we don't know what this series is actually about, it being a thematic cousin to those projects is very, very interesting. And it's very much in line with what FX does. FX tends to be very open with its creative teams to make things ranging from Atlanta to Legion to Fargo. These very personal, made-for-adult shows that often push boundaries. And Garland is a guy who's very smart. I hate this word, but very edgy, and tends to not want to cater to the lowest common denominator. So I think him and FX are a great fit. I thought of him making a sci-fi show like this. I'm all there for it, especially if Annihilation had so much trouble getting to the big screen with the producers and Paramount wanting him to dumb it down. I think FX is a place that will let him be him. I'm curious what you guys think. I know none of us here have seen Annihilation yet, but we all like Ex Machina. We all like Garland, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I think probably out of this group, Chris is probably the biggest fan?
Yeah, I'm a huge Alex Garland fan. I love Ex Machina. I'm very excited to see Annihilation. So I think he's one of the smartest writers working right now. So I'm very interested to see what he comes up with.
I wonder, FX is known for their creative freedom with, showrunners and stuff. I'm wondering if if that will be tested with Alex Garland, who notoriously likes to butt heads with producers and studios. But let's move on to our last bit because we are running late on the show, and that is Disney's streaming service. They have announced some of the movies and television shows being developed for the first year of this streaming service. Brad, what do we know?
Yeah, so we know that Disney is starting their own streaming service because Chris doesn't have enough stuff to watch, so Disney's like, here's some more. So originally we knew that there was going to be a lot of exclusive things that were going to be on here from Disney's own movies, since their deal with Netflix is expiring soon, to brand new original shows that they're creating themselves, like the forthcoming developing new Star Wars series. There's supposed to be like a live action one and an animated one in the works. But now we have details on some of the other things that will be coming to the streaming service. Some projects that we hadn't heard about before, some that we had that are seemingly getting quote unquote dumped onto Disney streaming service. And some of them on the movie side of things include a new version of Lady and the Tramp, which we believe is another one of Disney's live-action retellings of their animated classics, as they've done with The Jungle Book and soon The Lion King. There's also a project called Stargirl, which we believe is an adaptation of the young adult novel of the same name. There's also remakes of Three Men and a Baby and Sword in the Stone in the works. And there's some other movies that you can read about on there. One of the other ones that we'd heard about, or a couple of the other ones we heard about before, is a movie called Magic Camp, which is something that our own Peter Serretta was excited about.
Yeah, it was originally going to come out in theaters, but now it's getting dumped to the Disney ghetto of the streaming service.
Yep, and then another one will be Anna Kendrick's Christmas movie Nicole, which will be coming to the streaming platform. Apparently now it's being called Noel, but since that title comes from Deadline, it could be wrong because they don't know what they're talking about half the time. And that's that Christmas movie where she plays Santa Claus's daughter who has to step up and fill in for Santa Claus after he retires and Santa's brother doesn't take over the duties like he's supposed to. And then on the TV side of things, there's supposed to be Monsters, Inc. animated series. There's no plans for any new Marvel shows yet. Those still seem to be safe over at Netflix. And like we said, the Star Wars shows are coming. One thing that doesn't sound like we're going to get at all is there doesn't seem to be any plans for any R-rated content, which shouldn't be a surprise coming from the House of Mouse, even though Disney likes to put out a little bit more edgier, adult-oriented content through their Touchstone Pictures banner. It sounds like this Disney streaming service will be strictly for their Disney audience, which is primarily geared towards families.
So that's interesting. You don't think they're going to put any of like the R-rated Touchstone Pictures on there?
I don't know. It's tough to say. As of now, it sounds like the movies that they're developing simply for the streaming service aren't going to be in that vein. But since they're bringing their whole library of movies with them, maybe they'll have some of their more adult movies that'll be part of the library. But we won't really know until the service goes live.
Yeah, and it's just so you know. Oh wait, hold on. Yeah, so just so you know, Disney did release R-rated films through their Miramax Pictures label when they were involved with that. Touchstone Pictures, films like Ruthless People, Pretty Woman, Disney was responsible for. Snake Eyes, Starship Troopers, Enemy of the State, Con Air. So we yet to know if those will end up on the service, if the service is just going to stay PG and PG-13.
Or maybe they'll remake Con Air for families.
Okay, with that said, I think that brings an end to today's Slash Film Daily. Jacob, where can people find more of your work online?
I'm on slashfilm.com every single day, and Twitter, where I'm at Jacob S. Hall.
Chris, where can people find you?
I'm also at slashfilm.com, and I'm on Twitter at CEvangelista413.
Brad.
Find me on Twitter at Ethan_Anderton and listen to my podcast, Go Flix Yourself, FLIX, on iTunes and other podcasting platforms, and keep an eye out for my own script for that Con Air for Families.
What is it going to be called, Brad? What's the title?
Fun Air.
Fun Air. Okay. Yes, you can find me at SlashFilm on Twitter. You can find this podcast, Slash Film Daily, published on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, all the popular podcast apps every weekday. We will see you next Monday. Thanks for listening.